My dear PMP students, there's a lot of things that you need to know for the exam, and I'm going to wrap them all up into one pretty bow. The first thing you need to think about as you embark on this exam is how products get developed. You could think about this as some sort of product development cycle of life. Your questions are going to be posed in a frame of a product, a service, or a result. You could say some sort of deliverable. But I want you to categorically think about where you are relative to the product life. So you could be in analysis, you could be in design, you could be in development, you could be in some sort of testing phase, and you could be in some implementation phase. Okay? Now, all of this is inside a larger expanse of stuff. And I'm talking about your 5 process groups of project management. We have the 5 process groups of project management, which you can think about as some sort of exterior shell. So I want you to think about an exterior shell of events where we have initiating, we have planning, we have executing, we have monitoring and controlling, and of course, we have closing. So when you get a question, you need to ask yourself, where am I? Am I in initiating? Am I in planning? Am I in executing, monitoring, and controlling, or closing? Now, all of this stuff, we can look at this with a different bend. We can look at this as being a container for a lot of other things. So we're going to expand it. And then we're going to put inside here another view of the world. And that view of the world I want you to comprehend is the knowledge areas of project management. So while we have the big shell of the 5 process groups, as a project manager, you also have the perspective of areas of knowledge that your question on the exam could be posed from. So I want you to think about it like this. We also have a third layer where we identify your 10 areas of knowledge. So we have integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. And I'll just say stake. You kind of get it. Or stakeholder. So, as a student of this exam, your question to yourself always needs to be, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Where am I in the grand scheme? Where am I as far as these process groups are concerned? And where am I as far as these areas of knowledge are concerned? And then when you've got a better answer as far as where you are, you can then answer the question, what do I do next? See, you also need to ask yourself the question, Am I in design? Am I in development? Perhaps something should have already taken place. And as a result of that, I can disqualify options. This is how you need to think, okay? Again, in the nucleus over here, we have analysis, we have design, we have develop, which I'm moving around here. And I should probably use an alternate terminology here if I can. I just don't think it will let me. Once you put it in, you can't move it, but it's analysis, design, develop, test, and implement. Okay, now, with all of this said, when you get a question on the exam, this nucleus is going to shrink and something else is going to take precedence. So we're going to shrink down the 5 process groups because the exam is not about the 5 process groups. The exam is about a higher order, a higher level of awareness and thinking. And it comes down to this on the outside, what I'm about to show you here on the outside. And what I'm about to show you here on the outside is a concept that I call the Dig Civ Approach. That's D-I-G-C-I-V. I'm going to make that a green. And the Dig Civ Approach is this. Think about this as the I of project management success on this test. The wider part of the I is the Dig Civ Approach. And it goes like this. PMI is going to ask you to solve a problem. Let's just get that straight, because PMI always asks, what should the project manager do next, right? That's the question they always ask. So your goal on the exam, the moment you get the question, is to define what the problem is. Define the problem, okay? Your problem, I want you to look carefully. Your problem could be a planning, schedule-related design problem. It could be a schedule-related planning testing problem. Or it could be a communications problem that is happening in development. And it's tied to executing. Do you see the multiple layers of thought? And that's why you always need to define what is the problem. It's scope related. Is it happening in analysis, design, develop, test, or implement? Or does it not matter? Sometimes it doesn't. Other times it does. So you always want to define the problem. Then you want to identify the root cause. Identify the root cause. Okay. Then you want to generate alternatives. So what are we saying here? Let's dig a little bit deeper. We're saying when you get questions on the PMP exam, you want to define what the problem is. You want to identify the root cause of the problem, then mentally generate alternatives, even though the question has, of course, alternatives, but it does pay off when you think about the alternative yourself, and that helps you validate, as it were, if you're on the right track when you finally see the options posed by the PMI. So you generate the alternative and then choose the best alternative, okay? So on the exam, you got a question about risk. What should you do? Well, define what the problem is. It's in risk management. It's happening in the test phase, and it's happening in execute, right? Or it's happening as part of planning. It's relating to some sort of analysis, but it's risk related. You see how you have 4 layers of consciousness that you really need to hone in on for this exam. Of course, after you choose the best alternative, you would implement the alternative. So implement alternative. And last but not least, you want to make sure that the alternative actually worked. So ensure or verify solution effectiveness. And it's kind of like having a second check to make sure you're on the right path, okay? This is a method you can use to answer questions on your exam, okay? You have the layers of the process groups, the layers of the knowledge areas, the layers of a development lifecycle of sorts. Doesn't have to be software, it could be anything, right? And then you have the layer of consciousness of defining what the problem is. Now, there's a sub-step right over here. And this is where mentally, I'm going to make this orange because it's a sub-step. You can break down the problem into smaller chunks. Break down the problem into smaller chunks. So if you got a very large problem, you want to progressively break it down. The other thing you want to do to help you to identify the root cause is collect data. And sometimes the question itself has data buried. You need to extrapolate from what has been given. And this, my friends, is the eye of consciousness to help you answer questions on the exam. Go through this again, and the method is going to be ingrained in you to always define what the problem is, identify the root cause, generate the alternatives, choose the best alternative, and go back and say, if I do this in my head, does it look right? Does it sound right? And then verify once again. Always do a check. Did that make sense? Is that really what happens? And then just remember, you're always going to be told, what do you do next? And to know what you do next, you need to understand, I have a problem. It's a schedule-related problem. It's in planning, or I have a schedule-related problem. It's in monitoring and controlling, and it pertains to the implement stage. Because you will hear the word implementation on some of the questions, and you need to know what implementation is. It's just finally installing that thing or transitioning it over to the end users. And implementation means you're going live. And that's how you need to think about this stuff. All right. I hope this help gave you some perspectives about how to answer questions on the PMP exam. There are many other videos where I've talked about these components, but now you got all of these components in one place together. And also remember to take time to understand the question before lunging straight into it. I wish you all the best in your prep. Bye for now, my friends. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share.